Chapter 42. We talked it out. Less than third person POV greater than. The farm stayed quiet longer than usual. By the time the first people stirred, the sun was already up. Nobody had slept well. The night had been too heavy, with loss. Itachi was the first one awake, already sitting by the fire, making himself something simple to eat. Rick emerged from his tent a few minutes later, shoulders stiff, eyes shadowed from a night without rest. He stopped when he saw the boy by the fire. Morning, Rick muttered, his voice rough. Itachi glanced up, offering the faintest nod. Morning. Rick let out a breath and looked towards the line of parked vehicles, the supplies still untouched inside. He turned back to Itachi. When they're up, I'll need your help. We're gonna unload those cars and get everything sorted. Itachi nodded once. And someone should keep watch over the farm. Rick considered that for a moment, then gave a short nod. You're right. I'll ask around, maybe T-Dog can take the first watch. The two sat in silence, enjoying the quiet morning as they ate, neither feeling the need to speak. From the tents, a zipper rasped open, breaking the stillness. Not long after, more people began stirring. One by one, they stepped out into the sunlight, slowly gathering in the yard. Rick rose to his feet, brushing his palms against his jeans. His voice carried across the camp. Come on. Got something you all need to see. He started heading towards the parked vehicles, and the group followed, curiosity cutting through their fatigue. When Rick pulled open the first trunk, the weight of the yard shifted. Inside were bags of food, water, and medical kits. For a moment, no one spoke. Then a few murmurs broke the silence, disbelief and relief mixing together. Rick moved to open the doors to reveal rifles propped against the seats, bags of ammunition piled on the floorboards. Each car was packed to the brim with bags of rounds, high-caliber rifles, sealed military rations. And there stood the crown jewel itself, an armored vehicle. Jim let out a sharp breath, his words slipping out before he could stop them. Holy shit. Jackie gave a nervous laugh, shaking her head. Guess we don't have to count bullets anymore. T-Dog let out a low whistle. Man, this is unreal. With everything we had before, and now this. We're sitting on enough firepower to take down a small town. Andrea crossed her arms, a faint smirk tugging at her lips. This is like hitting the damn jackpot. The camp buzzed, voices overlapping in disbelief as people started moving, sorting everything into piles. Glenn's voice suddenly rang out, louder than the rest, carrying pure excitement. Holy crap. Heads turned. Andrea's eyes locked on him and immediately went pale. Glenn was standing by the armored car, both hands wrapped around a rocket launcher he had just dragged out of the backseat. Glenn, Andrea's tone went flat with alarm, all the color draining from her face. Don't move. Just put it down. Slowly. Instead of freezing, Glenn started to turn towards her, the launcher shifting with him. Andrea's eyes went wide, her hands shooting up. No, don't move it. T-Dog noticed next, his eyes going wide. Hey, man, whatever you do, don't drop it. He edged a step closer, his voice softening like he was talking to a toddler. Just put it gently down, okay? Nice and easy. Shane came up behind Glenn, his expression a mix of disbelief and fury. He grabbed Glenn's wrist firmly and pried the launcher out of his hands. Are you out of your damn mind? Don't wave this shit around. Glenn swallowed hard, his face red as he stammered. Sorry. I guess I got a little too excited. Never thought I'd actually hold one of these in real life. A few nervous laughs broke through the camp, the tension easing just enough for the group to get back to work. Off to the side, Rick caught Shane's eye. Without a word, the two slipped away from the noise, moving past the barn and out towards the tree line. By the time the weapons were sorted, the sun had drifted higher. The excitement had dulled into steady work, everyone falling into rhythm, doing what needed to be done. Inside the kitchen, Patricia and Jackie worked alongside Carol, Lori, and Amy. The counters were crowded with plates and rations. A large pot simmered on the stove as Amy stirred it carefully. It's almost funny, Jackie said, shaking her head as she chopped carrots on the counter. When everything started, we were arguing about scraps. Now we've got so much we don't even know what to do with it all. Patricia gave a small smile as she sliced open a packet of dried meat. That's a good problem to have. Carol set a few cans aside, her lips tugging into a grin. Don't forget the wine they brought back. Jackie laughed, shaking her head. Now, don't go tempting Lori. You know she can't have any. She leaned a little closer over the counter. And speaking of it, where did they put it? Amy raised an eyebrow at her, a small smile tugging at her lips as if she could already tell what Jackie was thinking. Lori rolled her eyes. Last thing we need is you stumbling around the farm. Jackie chuckled, shaking her head as she wagged a finger. That's just the jealous talkin'. Before Lori could reply, the sound of quick footsteps pattered down the hall. Sophia came running into the kitchen. Mom, can I go play with Itachi? She blurted, barely stopping to catch her breath. Carol smiled and ruffled Sophia's hair. Of course, sweetheart. Amy glanced up from the pot. He's training right now, but once he's done, you can. Sophia nodded eagerly, already running outside. Lori glanced at Carol, who had a smile lingering on her face. You don't mind her spending so much time with him? She asked carefully. Carol looked at her, a little puzzled. Why would I? He's been nothing but kind to her. He's protected her when I couldn't, and if he's showing her a thing or two on how to survive, I'm grateful for it. Lori didn't reply. She just pressed her lips together and turned back to her task, quietly stacking cans without another word. From the side, Amy's eyes flicked towards her. The smile she'd worn a moment ago faded as she studied Lori out of the corner of her eye. The sound of footsteps in the hall drew everyone's attention. Herschel stepped into the kitchen with Beth at his side, Jimmy close behind her, as if ready to steady her at any moment. Patricia looked up from the counter. Herschel, she said gently. We were just putting something together, there's plenty if you're hungry. Herschel gave her a small nod, his hand resting briefly on Beth's shoulder. Thank you, but we're just taking a walk outside. Needed a little air. His voice was steady, but his eyes lingered on Beth a moment longer. Patricia glanced Beth's way and smiled sadly, but before she could say more, Herschel cleared his throat. Come on. Let's get some fresh air. Beth nodded faintly, and Jimmy was already moving to her side. The three of them passed through the kitchen without stopping until the door shut quietly behind them. For a moment, the women left behind just exchanged glances, then the steady rhythm of chopping and stirring filled the silence once more. Outside, the group had been finishing up with counting and sorting the supplies. That rhythm broke when Rick and Shane finally came back, both streaked with blood and dirt, their faces swollen from fresh bruises. Glenn froze. What the hell happened to you two? Daryl leaned back against the truck, smirking. So, who won? Shane shot him a glare. Fuck off. Daryl's smirk widened. Guess we know who lost. The front door creaked open. Lori stepped out onto the porch, drawn by the commotion. Her eyes went straight to Rick and Shane, bloodied and bruised, both standing in the middle of the yard like nothing was wrong. What happened to you two? She asked, her voice edged with worry. Shane didn't even glance her way, brushing past the question like he hadn't heard it. Rick answered instead, but his gaze was fixed anywhere but on her. We talked it out. Chapter 43. Easy victory. Less than third person POV greater than. The group was already gathered in the house by the time the sun had dipped low. Rick and Shane sat at the table in silence, both of them carrying fresh bandages across their faces. Shane's left eye was swollen and bruised black, but he didn't say a word, just pushed food around on his plate. The quiet broke when the door creaked open. Itachi stepped inside, Sophia riding high on his shoulders, giggling as he carried her in. Her laughter was bright, cutting through the stillness in the room. He set her down gently beside Carol. Carol brushed a strand of hair from Sophia's face, smiling softly. And what were you two up to? Sophia perked up immediately, her eyes bright. He taught me a new game. I have to get to the finish line without making a sound. If I make noise and he catches me, I lose. Carol chuckled. And did you win? Sophia hesitated, glancing shyly up at Itachi before looking back at her mom. Number. Her cheeks flushed, but then she grinned again, clapping her hands together. But I got really close. Carol's smile widened just seeing Sophia so happy. A few chuckles rippled through the group at Sophia's pride. Carl, though, didn't laugh. He only stared, his eyes shifting from Sophia to Itachi, a flicker of envy crossing his face. Rick caught the look, his brow tightening ever so slightly. Why don't you play with them next time? Rick asked in a gentle tone. Carl blinked, surprised, then nodded quickly as a smile crept over his face. But Lori, sitting stiffly at Rick's side, frowned. I didn't agree to this. Rick turned to her sharply. And since when do I not get a say in what my son can and can't do? Lori froze, her mouth parting. That's not what I meant. Rick exhaled hard, shaking his head. Just let the kid play, Lori. The room went quiet. Forks clinked softly, but no one spoke, eyes darting between the two of them. But strangely, Shane never looked up. He just kept eating, without sparing a glance. Then a sudden pop cut through the tension. Everyone's heads turned towards the end of the table. Jackie sat there, wide-eyed, caught with a wine bottle in her hands and the cork dangling at her side. She blinked at everyone staring and raised an eyebrow. What? Never seen a lady have a drink before. Before anyone could answer, she tipped the bottle back and took a long, deep swig. Daryl smirked from across the table. Hell, look at ya. Putting the rest of us to shame. The group broke into laughter, the tight mood easing all at once. Otis disappeared for a moment, only to return with his arms full of more bottles, placing them down on the table with a grin. So, who ordered 3 more? Half the table shot their hands up without hesitation. Herschel chuckled, though he shook his head. Then, after a pause, he moved to a cabinet near the counter. From it, he pulled out a dark bottle of whiskey. This one, Herschel said, setting it down on the table, is from my private shelf. Daryl gave a low whistle. That's some good shit right there. Herschel shot him a look. Language. Daryl just smirked, said nothing more, and slid his glass forward. Herschel poured him a drink without hesitation, then turned and filled Rick's cup before the man had even asked. One by one, he poured for T-Dog, Glenn, Jenner, and Jim. Daryl noticed Itachi sitting empty-handed. With a grunt, he snagged another glass, held it out for Herschel to fill, then slid it across the table towards him. Daryl met Itachi's eyes. Ain't no fun sittin' sober while the rest of us drink. The group drank and laughed. Stories and jokes bounced around the table, filling the house in a sweet rhythm. Amy and Itachi sat side by side, talking and sharing small stories. Amy laughed, while Itachi answered with a smile from time to time. The warmth of it all shattered in an instant when a crash echoed from upstairs. The sound of breaking glass. Beth's voice rang out. Get out. Every head at the table turned upward. The laughter died at once, silence swallowing the room. A few seconds later, Jimmy made his way down to the group. Just smiling awkwardly, as every eye turned his way. Herschel shifted in his chair, his gaze moving towards his eldest daughter. Maggie, dear, would you go check on her? But Maggie was already pushing back from the table before her father had even finished speaking. She just nodded once and went upstairs. Herschel just stared at Jimmy for a moment before finally gesturing towards the table. Come eat something. Jimmy sat down slowly, keeping his head low as he tried to avoid eye contact with anyone at the table. Everyone understood not to ask questions, so they simply carried on eating and enjoying the moment. Then T-Dog glanced towards the dark windows, lowering his voice a little. Just making sure, someone's talking, second watch after me, right? Itachi immediately looked toward Rix, who seemed just as stunned by T-Dog's words. Without a word, Itachi pushed back his chair and headed straight for the door, slipping outside into the night. The farmyard was quiet, nothing but the hum of crickets and the faint rustle of trees. His eyes swept the darkness, searching for anything out of place. Behind him, footsteps stumbled over the porch. Amy followed. Is something wrong? Itachi didn't answer. He just kept staring into the shadows until his eyes shifted, the black bleeding into red. Amy froze at his side. Her lips parted slightly as she stared at him. She didn't say a word, just stood there with her mouth slightly open, caught between awe and disbelief. Itachi's eyes suddenly flicked to the right. Amy followed his line of sight, peering out into the dark fields, but she saw nothing. Just an empty field. Then his voice cut through the silence. A horde is coming. Amy immediately rushed back inside without asking another question. A second later, the sound of panic erupted, chairs scraping, glass breaking, voices rising all at once as everyone poured out of the house. Otis snatched up a nearby rifle, bracing it against the porch rail as he lifted the scope, scanning the fields. He froze after only a few seconds, his face draining of color. Mother of God, he muttered. There are hundreds. Rick immediately looked towards the others. Get the guns, now. Shane was already up, sprinting for the cars, shotgun in hand. Patricia lunged to help Herschel as the old man staggered, still stunned by the news. Herschel, come on, she urged, hauling him to his feet. I'll get the girls. I'll inform the girls. Don't worry, Herschel mumbled. Daryl was across the yard before Rick had even finished. Glenn, come here, he shouted. Glenn didn't hesitate. He shot up from his chair and sprinted toward the vehicle, boots pounding the dirt. Carol stood frozen for half a heartbeat, eyes on the dark horizon. Maybe they'll pass, just like on the highway. Rick's gaze stayed pinned to the fields. The first hints of movement blurred into shapes, then into a slow, obscene swell of bodies. A black tide rolling across the plain. He swallowed hard. They're heading straight for the house, he said, each word tight with urgency. That many, that size, it'd flatten the house. Someone, T-Dog, maybe, or Jim, nobody could tell, let out a curse. The clatter of metal echoed as people reached for weapons, checked magazines. It was a chain reaction. Itachi guided the children towards the armored car as it rumbled closer to the house, herding them quickly inside. He scooped up a stumbling Amy and lifted her in with ease, setting her down in the passenger seat beside Daryl. He placed a rifle taken from the bag Shane had brought back into her hands. His gaze shifted to the back seat where Carl sat wedged beside Sophia, wide-eyed and frozen. Itachi studied him for a heartbeat longer before drawing out a pistol and holding it towards him. Only use it if you really need it. Carl stared, stunned, as he took the weapon. Then nodded with sudden determination. I will. Amy looked at Itachi wide-eyed. Wait, I can help. He swung the door shut before she could finish. Daryl didn't wait. He slammed the car into gear and drove it closer, swinging it into position for Glenn to prepare his shot. One by one, the rest of the vehicles pulled up alongside, forming a rough line across the yard. Rifles were laid out along the hoods, each weapon set and ready to open fire. T-Dog shook his head, a wry grin flicking across his face. Hell of a time to be fighting a horde drunk. Andrea shot him a sharp look. Oh, shut up, just pray we get out of this in one piece. Before the quiet fell heavy again, all eyes snapped back to the fields. Then the first shapes began to emerge from the dark fields, staggering and swaying, dozens of them, and behind them an endless swell. Here they come, Rick muttered. Glenn didn't hesitate. He squeezed the trigger, and the gun roared to life, a thunderclap of fire and steel that lit up the night sky. Tracers ripped across the field, tearing through the dead like wet paper. The barricade erupted in fire. Rifles cracked, shotguns boomed, as the night flashed with bursts of light. Amid the chaos, Itachi fired in a steady rhythm, each bullet finding an eye, a skull, a kill, never wasting a round. The Green family joined the line. Herschel raised his old hunting rifle, Patricia clutched a pistol tight, and Otis fired steadily from the porch, each shot dropping another walker. Maggie stood firm beside her father, pistol in hand, firing into the mass. Together, they began thinning the horde. Bit by bit, the swarm faltered. The endless moans grew scattered, as the bodies piled higher in the fields. Each burst from Glenn's mounted gun carved open another gap, and Itachi's steady shots finished stragglers before they could get close. At last, the final walker toppled to the ground. Smoke hung over the yard, thick with the stench of blood and gunpowder. Silence followed, only the ringing in their ears and the hammer of their own hearts reminding them they'd survived. Glenn lowered his hands from the mounted gun. That was easier than I thought, he muttered, half in disbelief. A few tired laughs and nods followed from around the line, but Shane's voice cut through quickly. Don't get cocky. We only got through this because Itachi spotted them early. If they'd been any closer, we could have been overrun. Rick gave a firm nod. He's right. We got lucky tonight. If we weren't this well armed, it could have gone bad fast. He scanned the group. Get some rest. Tomorrow, we'll talk about what comes next. For now, we need to stay alert more than ever. Herschel stepped forward, his face drawn but resolute. Then you'll all sleep inside the house. It's about time anyway. Test tube author's note. I didn't want to drag out the fight with the walkers this time. The group has more people, they're better armed, and it wasn't a surprise attack, they spotted the horde way before it reached them. Because of that, I didn't see a long, drawn-out battle making sense for this chapter. But let me know what you thought. Did you like this approach, or would you have preferred a bigger fight? Blackheart, thanks again for reading. 37 comments, 0 vote. Chapter 44, The Road to Iron Gates. Less than third person POV greater than. Rick, Itachi, Daryl, and Shane sat around the dining table, a map spread open between them as they quietly discussed their next course of action. A few feet away on the couch, Glenn was curled awkwardly, muttering in his sleep. Damn Herschel, on the floor nearby, T-Dog slept with his arm over his face, while Jenner and Jim dozed against the wall. Jimmy was there too, sprawled out close to them, an odd sight that didn't go unnoticed. Rick looked at Shane, Itachi, and Daryl. As soon as everyone's up, we head for the prison. Shane leaned back. We'll need a couple trips to get everything there. Rick nodded. And we'll need to clean the place first. Daryl glanced at Itachi, a small look passing between them. Itachi spoke. That should already be taken care of. Rick looked confused. Shane glanced up as well, the same look on his face. Daryl added. We found 3 convicts locked inside. Shane's voice cut in. You want convicts to join us now? Itachi's gaze didn't waver. If they're useful, we need every hand we can get. But they won't be free to roam. The cell blocks can be locked down, and they'll have to earn trust first. Rick didn't look convinced, but he didn't reject it either. They get one shot. If they screw up, we put them down. Everyone exchanged looks, quietly agreeing. Rick folded the map and set it aside. I'll talk to Herschel, see if I can get him to come. But first we tell the others, and then get things moving. Most of the group was already awake, gathered in the living room as Rick stood at the front. He looked around at each of them before speaking. We're moving. The words drew immediate reactions. Andrea frowned. Why isn't here already good enough? You saw what we did to the horde. We can defend ourselves here. Rick shook his head. And what if a bigger one comes? And walkers aren't the only concern anymore. He let out a slow breath. I know no one wants to leave, but we don't have much of a choice. Carol raised her voice from near the couch. Where are we going? Rick answered without hesitation. The prison. Daryl and Itachi went before. It's secure, has walls, plenty of room, and a water source. Lori looked unsettled. You want us to live in a prison? Rick met her eyes for a moment, then looked back at the group. It has everything we need. I know it's not the most exciting place to live in, but it'll keep us protected. T-Dog gave a firm nod. I'm in. I'd rather be alive in a cell than dead out here. Glenn shifted. What about Herschel? Does he know? Rick met his eyes. I'll talk to him. Try to get him on board with us. Rick looked around at everyone one last time. Get ready. We're leaving immediately. Everyone immediately sprang into action, grabbing clothes, food, weapons, and hauling it out to the cars. A while later, Herschel came down the stairs, drawn by the noise. His brow furrowed as he looked over the chaos. What's all this? He asked, confused. Rick stepped towards him, lowering his tone. Herschel, we need to talk. He paused. In private. While Rick pulled Herschel aside, Itachi and Daryl were already gearing up, getting ready to check the prison one last time to make sure it was safe. As the two of them headed for the door, Amy's eyes followed Itachi. She lingered on his face, her gaze drawn to his eyes for a moment before she shook her head quickly and turned back to help the others pack. Itachi and Daryl walked up to the bike, and Itachi noticed right away that the trace of glitter was gone. He gave it a quick once-over, the faintest smile tugging at his lips. You missed a spot, he said, pointing towards the engine. Daryl's head snapped towards the spot. Bullshit. I scrubbed every inch of this damn thing all night. Itachi just let the smile linger, offering no reply. Grumbling, he crouched down to check anyway, running a hand along the metal. Nothing. Clean as it could be. He glanced back up, catching the small curve of Itachi's smile getting bigger. Daryl scowled. Asshole. Itachi said nothing, just adjusted his strap and waited by the bike. The two of them got on the bike and started heading toward the prison. Daryl kept his eyes forward, looking like he was already running through a dozen ways to get back at him. The cafeteria was quiet. The floors were scrubbed, the tables wiped down, the trash cleared away. Big Tiny, Oscar, and Axel sat together at one of the tables, an empty can between them as a reminder of how little was left. Big Tiny shifted uneasily, his big hands clasped together. Maybe they ain't coming back. Could be they just left us here. Oscar leaned forward, elbows on the table, eyes fixed on the can. Food's near gone. If they don't show up soon, we will have to go outside. Axel rubbed at his mustache, a faint smile tugging at it. Nah, fellas. If they were gonna leave us hanging, they wouldn't have bothered letting us clean this place up. He said it with a grin, but doubt crept in right after. Big Tiny looked at him, uncertain. Maybe we didn't clean the place good enough. Oscar just looked at him like he'd said the most ridiculous thing in the world. Axel chuckled, shaking his head. Come on, Tiny. This ain't about how shiny the floors are. If they left, it wouldn't because we missed a spot. The three sat in silence for a moment after Axel's words, the empty can sitting between them like it was staring back. Then a faint scrape echoed across the cafeteria, like a chair leg shifting. All three froze, eyes snapping towards the sound. Nothing. Just rows of empty tables. Big Tiny's voice came in low. The hell was that? Oscar's hand went to the shiv at his side. Axel glanced between them, mustache twitching nervously. A calm voice slipped into the air, right behind them. You cleaned it well enough. For a second, nobody breathed. A cold shiver ran through each of them, the hairs on the backs of their necks standing straight up. Slowly, they all turned around. Itachi was just there, sitting casually on top of the next table, like he'd been part of the conversation the whole time. For a long beat, no one spoke. Axel let out a nervous laugh. Man, if you keep sneaking up like that, one of us is gonna drop dead. Oscar just stared, unsettled, like the ground had shifted under him. The thought that he had been there the whole time, silent and listening, sent a chill through him. Big Tiny shifted in his seat, sweat beating at his temple as his eyes darted around like he could somehow retrace the path Itachi had taken in. Itachi stood and started heading towards the cafeteria doors, his voice carrying back over the quiet. We'll be moving in a couple of hours. We'll take cell block C and clear another one for you. At the door, he glanced back over his shoulder. Any objections? Oscar answered immediately, in a firm tone. None. Itachi gave a small nod. Good. Come with me. When the group arrives, I'll introduce you to the other and you'll help carry everything inside. Oscar gave a firm nod. Big Tiny let out a breath, relief written plain on his face. Axel scratched at his mustache, a shaky grin tugging at his lips. Long as I ain't stuck carrying the heavy end, I'm good. Big Tiny shifted forward, speaking earnestly. Then give all the heavy stuff to me. I can handle it. Itachi led the three prisoners out into the yard. When he spotted Daryl, giving him the green light. Daryl nodded once and immediately rode off on his bike. They waited outside, the minutes dragging. 10 passed before the distant growl of an engine caught their attention. All three prisoners turned their heads at the same time. Daryl's bike came first, dust spitting from the tires, but it wasn't what made their stomachs tighten. Behind him rolled an armored car, its steel plating gleaming under the daylight, heavy and unshakable as it pushed down the road. And right behind it, more vehicles followed in a line, pulling into the prison one after another. Big Tiny's eyes went wide. That's something else. Oscar's gaze stayed locked on the cars pulling into the prison. Axel, you better be on your best behavior. Axel flinched. You won't have to tell me twice. Chapter 45, Unwelcome Advances. Less than third person POV greater than. The cars slowed and came to a stop just inside the yard, engines cutting off one by one until the yard fell quiet once again. Rick pushed the door open and stepped out first, his eyes already moving across the prison yard, sweeping the fences and towers. One by one, the others filed out, all of them falling into a loose half-circle, scanning the yard with wary eyes. But Rick's focus didn't stay on the walls or the towers for long. His eyes fixed on the men standing beside Itachi, and his pace shifted as he headed straight for them. The rest of the group hung back near the cars, their attention pulled towards the exchange, cautious and watchful as it began to unfold. When Rick finally closed the distance, he came to a stop in front of them and extended his hand. Rick Grimes. Oscar stepped forward first and took it firmly, his grip steady as he gave a small nod. Oscar Ward, he said in a respectful tone. Axel stepped in next, flashing a quick grin as he shook Rick's hand. Axel, he said. The last of the three moved forward, towering over the others but carrying himself with an easy calm. He took Rick's hand gently. Theodis, he introduced himself, then gave a small smile. But most folks just call me Big Tiny. They're here to help everyone unload, Itachi said, motioning towards the three men beside him. Rick gave a short nod. Appreciate it. Itachi's eyes narrowed slightly. Herschel didn't come. We'll pick him up when we go get everything else, Rick said. He wanted to say his goodbyes to the farm one last time. He turned his attention back to the rest of the group, raising his voice so everyone could hear. All right, people, let's get to work and start unloading. The group stirred at his words, everyone already breaking off into motion but still keeping an eye on the prisoners. Rick shifted back towards Itachi. Glenn and Shane are staying with Herschel, just in case. Itachi sent him a sidelong glance. Rick let out a quiet sigh. I told Shane to keep an eye out in case more walkers showed up. And Glenn, he wouldn't come unless Maggie was with him. Itachi gave a small nod, saying nothing more, then turned his eyes back on the prisoners. Oscar caught the look right away and nudged Axel and Big Tiny. The three of them moved off together to help the others unload. Itachi glanced back at Rick. And how are things with Shane? Rick didn't answer for a moment, lost in thought. I don't know. I don't even know what's going on inside my head right now. When we fought, I wanted to tear him apart and be done with it, and then there was this other part of me that wanted to reach out and pull him back up. Rick dragged a hand down his face. I hate him, I really do. But at the same time I love him just the same. The words hung between them for a moment before Rick went on. I don't see a middle ground. Either we find a way back to how we used to be, or one of us ends up dead. He hesitated, his voice dropping lower. Sorry for putting all this on you. Itachi set a hand on Rick's shoulder. I was the one who brought it up. You don't need to be sorry for answering. He looked at Rick. I may not have much to offer in the way of encouragement, but I can listen. Rick gave a faint smile. Thank you, really, for everything. While the two of them stood off to the side, the rest of the group had already started unloading, getting their first real look at the prisoners as they worked alongside them. Big Tiny came walking across the yard with 2 bags slung over each shoulder, hauling twice as much as anyone else without looking strained. T-Dog caught sight of him and let out a low whistle. Damn, man, you hiding a gym in there somewhere. Big Tiny chuckled as he set the bags down near the pile. Nah, that's just my grandma's cooking, put muscle on me whether I wanted it or not. T-Dog cracked a grin, shaking his head. Gotta get me some of that recipe. Big Tiny smiled, sincerely. If I could, I'd trade you a plate right now. The moment drew a few small laughs from the others nearby, easing some of the tension as the work carried on. Axel had been hauling bags from the truck, but his eyes weren't on the work for long. He spotted Amy struggling with a duffel bag and wandered over, wiping his hands on his pants as he put on that easy grin of his. Here, let me get that for you, darlin', he said, sliding in close like he was doing her a favor. Amy felt him closing in and shifted back a step, her grip tightening on the bag. She gave a small, polite smile. It's all right, I can handle it. Axel chuckled and waved his hand, dismissing it. Wouldn't sit right with me, watching a lady do the heavy lifting. Amy's voice lost all of its softness. Her eyes fixed on him with a sharpness that didn't belong to the girl she usually showed the group. I said I've got it. Before Axel could get another word out, a sharp crack split the air. He stiffened at once, the sound ringing too close, and then he felt it, a sudden warmth sliding across his cheek. His hand shot up on instinct. When his fingers came back smeared red, his grin vanished. He blinked hard, gaze dragging past Amy until he caught sight of the kunai lodged in the ground. Axel's chest tightened as he slowly turned his head. Itachi stood a few yards away, right at Rick's side, calm as if nothing had happened. But another kunai rested between his fingers, balanced and ready to fly at the slightest shift. Rick's hand had drifted down to rest on his pistol holster, eyes locked on the scene. From the edge of his vision came the faint scrape of steel leaving leather. Axel turned and saw Daryl, knife already drawn, ready to cut him down at a moment's notice. Oscar noticed the shift immediately and ran forward, both hands raised. Easy now, he said quickly, glancing between Rick, Daryl, and Itachi. Ain't no need for this. Axel was just running his mouth, like he always does. He didn't mean anything by it. Axel swallowed hard, forcing a shaky laugh as he turned back to Amy. Sorry about that, I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. Itachi's gaze lingered on Axel before he finally slipped the kunai back into place. Daryl followed suit, sheathing his knife, and Rick eased his hand away from his holster. Axel rubbed the back of his neck and awkwardly went back to hauling boxes, keeping his head low. The tension bled out of the yard as the group went back to work. Conversations picked up again. Bit by bit, the piles from the trucks grew smaller. When most of the gear was finally unloaded, Rick gave the signal. Andrea climbed into the RV, heading out to fetch the others, along with the last of the supplies left behind at the farm. The rest stayed behind and focused on moving the weapons and supplies to the cell block. The prisoners helped with carrying everything, but not once were they allowed near the guns and ammo. When the first of the group stepped inside the block, Rick spoke up. At night we'll lock the main entrance. I've got the keys, and Itachi has the spare. He looked at the cells. 2 people per cell. Just pick yours. Daryl gave the row of cells a quick look before turning away. I ain't sleepin' in no cage. I'll take the perch. T-Dog set his bag down in one of the cells. Guess I just made history. First black man happy to sleep in a cell. Jackie walked up right after him and dropped her bag inside the same cell. She smirked. And you just broke another record, first inmate to land himself a female cellmate. A couple of laughs rippled through the group, breaking some of the tension. Jenner gave a small smile as he walked to one of the cells. This is the safest place I've seen since the CDC, so not much complaining from me. One by one, the rest followed suit. Bags were dropped, cells claimed, voices carrying softly through the block as people made their choices. It wasn't home, not yet, but it was shelter that could lock against the outside.